You're fine.
Yeah.
There's a little folder on your desktop.
Yeah.
Hey, over here.
Well, I go to here though.
Go back to the agenda.
Oh, fine, I'll do it your way.
You can multitask, let's go.
I'm fine.
All right, Fred, you ready?
Oh, wait a minute, this isn't,
Good evening, welcome to a Monday, December 6th, 2021, Board of Selectmen, Highway and Cemetery Commissioners meeting. Like always, pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to accept consent agenda as presented.
second?
We need roll call, right?
No.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're gonna move town administrator's report down a little bit. We're gonna go to licenses, permits. Henry and Sophia. Is anyone here? Henry Sales and Service, request to change the maximum number of vehicles from 8 vehicles to 15 vehicles. Can you tell us a little bit about this, please?
Yes, we did have the guy who was renting the garage, Sam. So we give him 8 vehicles so he can have it, say or whatever he tried to do it. But he's not there anymore, and we're back taking care of everything now. So we would like to back to 15 like we used to have it.
Any questions?
Just one, Mr. Chair, as I'm scanning through the packet. You have a letter from building inspector, zoning enforcement.
I have one from back in like 2018 when they initially split up the spaces, if you like. But he didn't really, he said the maximum was 15.
Used to was no limit. There was grandfather law. We didn't have no limits. And Mr. Mrochka changed that because he has his garage, in Webster.
So,
with that
Mr.
lane.
Chair, the administrator, is that okay? We don't have any current?
Michelle will go get the letter.
Yeah, but it's not current. Is that okay?
It's
I mean,
not current, and I actually would like the police chief to take a look at this too, because there's been some problems with the former tenant.
yeah, he's not here.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to withdraw the prior permit in order to grant this? Meaning, because if we were to grant this for 15 and the other has got 8 and it's still hanging out there.
Yeah,
Just a
what's the
thought.
proper protocol for a
Would-
change?
We would just we would modify the existing permit would work.
What would the new license say? 15 anyway, it's the first of the year we're reading.
They had 15 and they split it so that the tenant could use some of them and they could.
Right, I
use
remember
them.
that. There's some on the side, some in the front.
So technically, it's okay for 15, but I want to make sure that because of the amount of calls that we had down there, that the police chief takes another look at that and make sure that we're going that way with
2019.
that.
Well, if the administrator is waiting for comments from police, is it okay to do a conditional approval upon successful comments from the police chief, or should we wait and have him come back?
I'd rather we waited, but
It's the board's pleasure.
What's the administrator's opinion? The first I heard about the police chief needing to look at it too.
The reason I would ask that the police chief look at it is because of the prior issue that was there with the split. I want to make sure that that issue has been, I want to make sure that 15 spaces is not too much. because that might have been the issue to begin with, that they were spilling out into the street. So I'd like to have the police chief take a look at it.
Well, Mr. Chair, hang on, I'm just scrolling again.
Want to hold off?
We could hold off, Mr. Chairman, or you could defer it to me and it would be approval pending my review and with the police chief and.
That's not much different than a addition. So,
Kerry?
motions to
Sorry.
propose?
Kerry, what's your feeling on it? You want to just wait till we get all the information?
That's what I'm thinking, because if it was just one thing we were waiting on, conditional would be fine, but it sounds like there's a couple of things as far as, personally, I'd rather we just wait and do it right the first time at our next meeting.
December 20th? Want to just continue this hearing till December 20th?
Yeah, because this isn't listed as a public hearing, it's just a license and permit.
Or we continue the matter till December 20th?
Yeah, and Mrs. Sizzlick doesn't have to come back unless it's a problem.
No.
You don't have to come back the next meeting, we can sign it.
If
Unless there's a
there's
problem.
going to be a change in
Oh,
the
shouldn't
number,
be.
we should
Okay.
probably come back
Yeah,
and discuss it, but if it's okay the way it is, then
we'll just sign it.
move forward with it. That sounds reasonable to me.
So you understand what we're gonna do? We have to double check with the police chief and
Okay.
Building.
building, and if there's nothing wrong with it, you won't have to come back.
I don't mind to come if I have to, but it's okay.
It's nice, all right, so it'll probably be
I
December 20th.
love to see you.
Okay.
Yeah. Once a year is enough, right?
Yes.
Whether we need it or not, right?
Hey,
All right.
Mr. Chair, make a motion then that we defer action tonight pending building inspector and police chief approval, not to have Mrs. Sidlick come back as long as there's no issue.
Second?
First and second?
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion?
I would just, on the record, I would say, Mr. Chairman, that we're just deferring tonight to make sure that the allotment of 15 spaces is still appropriate to the license, that's all.
I can add that to the motion, Mitchell. Waiting on approval. When I said that, just add in the 15, up to 15 spaces.
I'll second the addition.
All right, no more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll be in contact with you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Joshua.
you. Have a wonderful Christmas if I don't see you.
All right, should we jump to Joe? Get him out of here?
Yeah. Without objection, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, without any objections, we're gonna skip to, who?
Eagle Scout.
Hmm?
I emailed you today, Lisa wants to talk.
Lisa Bird?
Is that on the departmental? Oh, well,
It's about item
Eagle
6.
Scout.
okay.
So just, Mr. Chairman, if you could recognize Lisa Bird to speak on item 6.
Okay, item 6, Eagle Scout citation, Joseph Garagno. Ms. Bird, would you like to make some comments first?
I would. I had to write these down so I wouldn't ramble. So I've known Joe since he was around 14 years old. He was a student. He knew that a girlfriend and I were helping with the homeless and the needy, and he approached me to see if he could help with non-perishable foods. This wasn't through the Boy Scouts. This was on his own, and he used his allowance to do this. Even at that young age, he wanted to help those in need, which is impressive for today. Not only does he continue to help us every single month, but he has also volunteered for similar type charitable organizations. When it came time for Joe's Eagle Scout project, he asked me if he could do part of his project for me. Joe, knowing a friend and I helped with the homeless and needy, wanted to help as well. His project was to fill as many backpacks as he could for the local homeless and backpacks for the children in our school system. Joe was a very bashful young man, and I knew this was going to be outside of his comfort zone to do this. The day of the job for the collection for items for the project, I watched this shy young man become a leader with his peers and volunteers in an organized manner. His project was a huge success. He filled more than 20 backpacks for the children and 12 backpacks for our homeless and needy. I took several pictures that day and asked him if it would be okay if I could post these on Facebook. Being the humble young man that he was, he didn't want to be recognized, and he promptly said no. You see, Joe wanted to help people, which attests to his willingness to genuinely help people in need without being recognized, which is a rare trait today. Joe doesn't realize how many hopeless, needy, and just plain old down on their luck people who are trying to get back on their feet that he's helped. My girlfriend and I personally get to experience the joy you see on the faces of those that we help, and the thanks, all due to thanks and generosity of Joe's kindness. Joe's kindness is a testament to his parents who taught him the importance of helping the less fortunate. Joe, you have a big heart. I'm grateful and proud and blessed to know such a young man with high morals and your love for others. Michelle and Joe, I'm sure you're just as proud. You've done a great job. Congratulations. This honor is well deserved. Thank you.
Want him to come up?
Joe, you want to come up? Welcome, Joe,
Thank you.
and congratulations again.
Thank you.
The ceremony was great a couple months ago. Congratulations from the town of Dudley and the Board of Selectmen for this great achievement. Doesn't happen every day, and the amount of work that you do to earn this is it's pretty amazing. So thank you for keeping the tradition alive. And any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I echo you congratulating Joe. It's quite an achievement. That's a pretty active troop up there. They've had more than a handful of Eagle Scouts.
Yep.
So you want to tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got there, or are you comfortable with what Mrs. Berg said? Or?
Sure, I'll elaborate. So, I began the Cub Scouts when I was around 8 years old. My mom's been a big help throughout all those years. She helped with the Cub Scout pack, along with other leaders along the way. I crossed over into Boy Scouts when I was 10, and I learned all the requirements. I learned all the skills that I needed to. Eventually did my Eagle Scout project, which Lisa detailed out. And I was also a senior patrol leader for the troop for a year. And I had to lead those kids in the COVID year. So what was otherwise a outdoor program turned virtually Zoom, and that proved to be difficult for many of the kids. But I did my best to lead them the most effective way possible, and I'm still active as an adult leader today. And many of the ideals that I learned through scouting pass into my personal life, like with this project I've been doing with Lisa the number of years. And I'm not sure who I would be today if it wasn't for scouting, to be honest. It's just created my identity as a whole. And it's just crafted me to be who I am today.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Come up. Joe, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to become an Eagle Scout? Was it right when you were 8, a year in? How long?
I pretty much knew right away. It was just to aim high and go for what I could.
So you worked for this for 10 years?
For about 8, yes.
8, I'm
Yep.
just,
Yeah.
I reversed my
Yeah.
numbers, sorry about that. That amazes me, because in today's world where everything is click a couple buttons and you've got a hamburger in an hour, I mean, delayed gratification, that's just about anything in life. It doesn't come instantly, you gotta work hard at. So it's good to see that work ethic is still alive and well, and now will serve you well in the future, I'm sure. Congratulations.
Want to come up and get a proclamation and a
Yep.
photo?
You want to read the proclamation?
Sure. Proclamation. Whereas Joseph Garagno, member of Troop 273, has achieved the highest rank in Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout. Whereas Joe led volunteers, including family, friends, and fellow scouts, with the project of gathering needed supplies to fill 70 backpacks to distribute to children at Dudley Elementary School and members of the homeless in the area. Whereas his leadership skills enabled him to gather a workforce totaling 235 labor hours on his project, a noble and kind endeavor that helps create a strong sense of community in Dudley. Now therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen for the town of Dudley, extend our sincere appreciation and hereby present this proclamation to Eagle Scout Joseph A. Gragno.
Yep.
Congratulations,
All right,
Joe.
and-
Quite an achievement.
Joe, I will do a photo, but I don't know if he shouldn't be in front.
I think you probably should.
Even
I'll put it in front?
even I
Okay.
can say
Joe,
that.
come on.
We won't
over
hide
here.
behind them, we'll flank on either side.
Even I can say that.
Isn't there a
Don't hide
step
behind
stool
me.
under there?
Oh, you know who's not here, so
Yeah.
we should be all set.
Good thing Massey's not here.
Right, we gotta push in here.
Awesome.
Congratulations again, Joe.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Thank you.
It's awesome. What an
We'll
achievement.
do something else again.
Congratulations, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Joe. All right, now back. Let's see. I'm doing these all out of order. That's fine. Public hearing. Change of manager. 88 Bar and Grill. DBA Firebrands Bar and Grill, 8 Airport Road, Dudley.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read the notice?
Yes, please.
Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 6, 2021, at 6:30 p.m. at the Dudley Municipal Complex, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. 01571, the Veterans Memorial Hall, room 321A. Purpose of this hearing is to act on an application for a change of manager for 88's Bar and Grill, Inc., DBA Firebrands Bar and Grill, located 8 Airport Road, Dudley, Mass. 01571. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should call the Board of Selectmen's office to appear at the date and time specified or to submit their concerns in writing. On behalf of John Massey, Chairman.
Open the public hearing at 6:53. Welcome, gentlemen.
Okay, good evening. I'm Kevin Cromer, proprietor of Firebrands Bar and Grill. This is John Paradise. He's our chef manager. And I'm here tonight to request a change of bar manager liquor license holder to John Paradise.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick ones. I spoke to Mr. Cromer earlier, and give Kevin a chance to kind of toot his own horn. Kevin, there's never been any problems up there with any other permittees, right?
No,
No issues ever?
no.
And Mr. Paradise is well-versed in the restaurant bar
Yes.
business?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. We have no other concerns or anything, right, through our office?
Everything's in order.
Excellent. How many years, Kevin? 16?
Excuse me?
16 years up there you've been?
Yeah.
No questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Anyone here from the public?
Anyone from the public that needs to be heard at this time? Hearing none. See, that was easy, right?
Yeah, simple.
All right. Board, what's your pleasure?
Recommend you close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Close the public hearing at 6:55.
So we didn't go backwards, Mr. Chair. Can we say 6:57 instead of 6:53? We opened at 6:53, but it's 6:55.
5 is after 3.
I opened it up at 6:53
Yes.
and I closed it at 6:55?
Pretty quick
I'm
and
sorry.
efficient.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I said 6:50.
Yeah, I
6:55.
apologize, yes.
It's the best public hearing ever.
It's gonna be a bloodless
Oh, it's an easy one.
That's good.
Couldn't get a guy out.
That's good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
make a motion to grant the request before us of change of manager for 88 Bar and Grill, DBA Firebrands, to John Paradise.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a
Good
good
luck.
night. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. You gotta do the top. Attaboy. You're doing great.
People don't want to cover all the time, you know.
What are we doing now? Town administrators report?
Now we go to town administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before Olivia comes up to talk about our permitting fees, I have a few updates for the board. The first update is on our fuel cards. Our transition off of the town fuel tanks and onto fuel cards has been moved forward substantially since the last meeting. The cards have all been programmed with the corresponding vehicle information. The cards have been received, and I will meet with the department heads next week with the highway superintendent to distribute the cards for their respective fleets. If all goes well, we will not be ordering any additional fuel for the town fuel tanks, and the remaining fuel, mostly diesel, will be used by highway, water, and sewer over the winter until the tanks are emptied. The next step will be to decommission the tanks and to have them permanently removed from the site, and the highway superintendent is working on a timeline that I'm hoping will wrap up the entire project by late next spring. The Water and Sewer Infrastructure Funding Committee had an organizational meeting on Thursday to install officers and set its first agenda. Deb LaPlaca was appointed to chair the committee. Mike Mayotte is the vice chair. Mark Landry is the clerk. The committee reaffirmed its three basic goals that they were tasked with by the Board of Selectmen as, first, to gain an understanding of the impact and cost that the borrowing attributed to infrastructure repair, improvement, and regulatory requirements will have on water and sewer ratepayers. Second, to look for alternatives to paying for the borrowing entirely through increases in water and sewer rates to decrease the burden currently placed entirely on the ratepayers. And third, to present to a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Water Sewer Commissioners, hopefully in March 2022, a written recommendation of any action or actions that the committee recommends to reduce the burden on taxpayers, specifically any action that may require executive approval in time for the annual town meeting, town election, or special town meeting, or November 22 election. Finally, the committee has asked me to reclassify the treasurer-collector as a voting member of the committee rather than an ex officio member, as I had originally presented to the board. So if there's no objections from the board, that was the committee requested that we appoint the treasurer-collector as a voting member as opposed to an ex officio.
Mr. Chair, was there a reason given why? I know on capital improvements, he's ex officio. He's not a voting member.
He indicated a desire to be able to vote, and the committee had no issue with it.
Thank you.
I'm ex officio. I'm actually looking for some guidance from this committee, so I don't need to vote. I just will be there to support it and add what I can to it.
There was a request. Treasurer-collector, voting member.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually on the committee. I'm the selectman's representative. So, yeah, I have no problem with it. I mean, the way I look at it, this is, we're deciding something involving rates, involving numbers, involving money, and as we said before, he's the CFO of the town. I think he should have a voice.
You need any action from the board?
Unless, if there's no objection to it, we can just, by will of the committee, make him a voting member. It shouldn't be an issue.
Objections?
No, thank you.
So be it.
Okay, thank you, and I want to give a minute to Michelle to update us on the happenings on December 8th
Excuse me.
for the public.
We have our annual tree lighting this coming Thursday, December 8th, at 6 o'clock. Here
Ninth.
at the town hall.
Isn't it the 9th?
Yeah, at 6 o'clock.
Is it the 8th?
Oh, somebody said 8th.
It is Thursday evening. Must be the 9th. Today's the 6th.
Right now, so we're not getting.
Today is the 9th.
Today's the 6th, right?
Today's the 6th. In any event, it will be open to all residents. Santa Claus will be arriving on his magical fire truck, as he does every year. And we will have the tree lighting outside. Refreshments will be takeout refreshments this year. Due to COVID, we asked the Board of Health and they recommended that. So that's what we're gonna do. Little grab bags for the children, and they can still visit Santa.
That's correct. It's Thursday, December 9th at 6 PM, as posted.
Please come.
And that also, that's our late night here at the town hall, and generally the employees help out with the event, so just kind of want a little bit of a clarification about the later office hours versus helping with arrival from Santa. How would the board like me to handle that?
Santa bringing the permits and stuff?
Huh?
Santa's bringing the permits? and all
He
that good
probably
stuff?
will if you want him to.
Sure. That'd be great. All right, anything else?
That's it. Next would be, a few months ago, as we do every year, we were taking another look at, we kind of missed last year because of COVID. We reevaluate our posture in terms of what we charge for building permits and fees. I asked Amanda from the building department to put that together for me, and I handed that data off to Olivia Antonson, who's gonna come up and give us a presentation and a recommendation to perhaps get us to the point where we're about average with other towns. So
Is that based on need to cover costs?
it's based on need to cover new costs and rising costs.
So it's not to put us in the mid-range of other towns?
No, it will put us in the mid-range of other towns is covering costs. For example, Charlton is about the mid-range what we'd be shooting for with some of their permitting fees. And Charlton just adopted the online permitting service, which we did about 6 months ago. And they will be able to cover their costs in that mid-range. So that's one of the things we'd be looking at.
So, Mr. Chair, we did not do this last year, right? So
No, we
we're
skipped
2
last
years
year.
out.
It's been
2 years.
It's been almost, this will be year 6 without us taking another look at our permitting fees.
So they haven't changed in 6 years.
They haven't changed in 6 years. They haven't been revisited in 6 years, put it that way.
Perfect time.
Olivia? Olivia is an intern at Nichols who recently graduated and will be finishing up her time here with us for a few more months.
Not graduated yet, 9 more days. Felt it had to be that clarification. Not that I'm counting, but
It's all over but the crying at this point.
Nothing's gonna happen in the next 9 days, right?
hopefully not.
I thought that in high school.
Okay. So is this not gonna work? Because, let's see.
Got some graphs up here.
I don't know what that means.
Well, let me point into the
PowerPoint can't read.
Screwed up
You read
again?
twice.
Twice in a row.
At some point, we just need an old school cable to go from that to that.
Well, it's not that, this time it's a different problem, you see.
Turn the crank, it's gotta go on.
I'll log into my own network. Please, talk amongst yourselves.
Dead silence. You do board member comments, get them out of the way.
Yeah, might as well move on while we're struggling with this.
All right. Let's skip ahead to old business. Any old business? Any new business? Board members' comments?
Really?
Mr. Chair, I'll just have a couple, nothing. Hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. Turned out to be a beautiful day. Santa's ride seemed like it went pretty well. Wasn't as beautiful on Santa's ride, but Santa made it to all his appointed streets. A good time by all. And I just want to make note, he may be a Charlton resident, but he was a Dudley Charlton Regional School District student, Shepherd Hill grad. Sean Mckeon, playing for the Dallas Cowboys, caught his first touchdown pass on Thanksgiving and leading my beloved Cowboys to defeat. But kudos to Sean Mckeon, University of Michigan alumni. Congratulations, Sean.
I'm up. Just want to reiterate the tree lighting Thursday, the 9th of December, right? The 9th? Yeah. Some of the good comments I get are the things that we do that I think make the town good. The way that Santa comes by with the fire truck and waves to everyone, I mean, that's something you don't see in a large city. That kind of, me personally, it gives me more of a sense of community to see everyone following along on the app. Where's Santa? Kind of like how when I was a kid, NORAD used to track them on TV, but now you can watch our Santa in our area going through on an app. So I encourage anyone who is able, who wants to please come to the tree lighting this Thursday, the 9th. That's all. Thank you.
Just like to congratulate Joe one more time. Well done. To echo what Kerry said, the activities that the volunteers put together for us is pretty amazing. So, thank you all. I stall some more.
Oh, we still have student rep too, and we're ready to go after.
Did something right, because Town of Dudley's calling right now.
Yeah, could I take a moment to read the alert that just came through before we go to the student rep? Just in case people
Sure.
don't have an old school flip phone and can't get this. Tuesday, December 7th, that's tomorrow. The notice here from Dudley Alert, and if you want, you can sign up for the Rave Alert from our website. Please try to avoid Schofield Ave between George Street and New Boston Road from 8 a.m. until 12 noon for work at the water pump station. And that's tomorrow from 8 a.m. till noon, Schofield Ave between George Street and New Boston Road. Avoid it. Thank you.
All right. Back to the presentation.
Okay. So as John said, my name's Olivia Antonson. I'm a senior at Nichols College and an intern here with the Town of Dudley, and I'm going to be presenting about a possible increase in our building permitting fees, which is a financial summary and analysis of the building and zoning department's fiscal years 2016 to 2021. So the purpose of this report is to provide visual and written representation of the permit fees in Dudley in comparison to 5 local towns, those towns being Webster, Oxford, Southbridge, Charlton, and Sturbridge. It was prepared in order to answer the question of whether or not the town of Dudley should increase some of its permit fees. The fee comparisons highlight categories in which Dudley's permit fee cost is either below average or the lowest in comparison with the 5 neighboring towns, which I just listed. There are a few categories where Dudley has the highest fee. However, for the purpose of this report, focus is not placed on these areas because I cannot recommend that we raise our fees if it's already the highest of the towns. And the last increase to our permit fees came in 2012. So I have 11 fee comparisons here today broken down by category. So we're going to start off with electrical. So here we can see this nice bar graph which shows the cost in Dudley versus the 5 neighboring towns. As you can see with electrical garage, Dudley has the second lowest fee at $75, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $92.50. So you can see that Dudley is below average here, and this format will be used for future presentation slides here. So with electrical pool house work, Dudley has the lowest fee, again $75, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $107.50. For electrical shed work, Dudley has the lowest fee, again at $75, with the average of the 6 local towns being $100.83. Next up, we're moving on to gas. So there is some variances in how each town structures its fees, because some towns charge a flat rate and then charge per fixture. So I thought the easiest way to demonstrate this would be just saying that there's a 1 fixture project here. So Dudley has the 3rd lowest fee at $75, same as 2 other towns, with the average fee of the 6 local towns being $104.67. So then gas for commercial first fixture, again, variances in fee structures. So Dudley having the lowest fee at $75, with the average fee of the 6 local towns being $138. Moving on to plumbing here. We have, this one is commercial review plans. So Dudley has the lowest fee of the 6 local towns at $125, with the average being $154.17. For plumbing residential finish above ground, Dudley has the lowest fee at $75, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $104.17. And then finally, with our fee comparisons for the building fees, again, variances in fee structures here. So a dollar value of $100,000 was assigned to this example residential construction project. Dudley has the lowest fee at $600 in this instance of $100,000 project, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $850. So here we have building fees for a residential addition or renovation, again using that example of a $100,000 project. Dudley has the 2nd lowest fee at $600, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $658.33. Figure 10 shows building fees for commercial construction, again $100,000 project. Dudley has the 3rd lowest fee at $800, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $816.67. And finally, to wrap this up, building fees for windows and doors. Again, I had to assign a project value due to variances in fee structures, so I assigned this a $5,000 value. Dudley has the lowest fee at $50, same as 1 other town, and the average fee of the 6 local towns is $70.83. I've also compiled this information about our 11 previous fees here into this nice table showing the permit in the left column, then the permit fee for Dudley in that 2nd column versus the high, low, mean, median, and mode of all 6 towns. The mean being the average value, which is what I've been referring to throughout this presentation. The median is the middle value of the data set, and the mode is the most frequently occurring value in the data set. Moving on to revenue of the zoning department for fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 21. All of these next slides are going to be focused on fiscal years 16 to 21. So you can see here that in fiscal year 21, the zoning department's revenue hit a 6-year low, collecting $650. For revenue in the building department, you can see that from fiscal year 17 to 20, there was a steady decrease in revenue. Fiscal year 21 saw an increase in revenue from fiscal year 20, but fiscal year 21 is still the 3rd lowest revenue amount in the 6-year look back. Also covering here salaries, this one is for the building inspector. You can see that there's been a consistent increase in salary each year for the building inspector. Then we have the zoning licensing and inspector clerk. I believe it was a personnel change that caused that change in salary you see from fiscal year 19 to 20. So you can see that fiscal year 20 and 21 then saw a decrease in salary expense by approximately $14,000 per fiscal year when comparing it to fiscal years 16 through 19. However, I do not think that this is a decrease enough to justify not touching our permit fees. And then expenses, first up with the building department, this is broken down to a few different categories. So we see that fiscal year 21 saw a sharp increase in general expenses for the building department. You can see it went from $282.78 in fiscal year 20 to $1,666.58 in fiscal year 21. So costs are on the rise. With our expenses in the building department for the supplies category, this number's held relatively steady since fiscal year 18 and decreased slightly in fiscal year 21. Our building department travel expenses, fiscal year 21 saw a sharp increase in travel expenses when compared to fiscal year 20. My assumption is that fiscal year 20 was low because of COVID-19 travel restrictions. And then finally, talking about gross profit, unfortunately, I had to make this a bar graph instead of a line graph because of the amount of numbers. It was just formatted really weirdly. So we can see here that figure 19 displays the trend in gross profit for the building and zoning departments over the previous 6 fiscal years. Fiscal years 19, 20, and 21 had the 3 lowest gross profit amounts out of the 6-year look back. So even though we can see that there has been a trend in increasing profit from fiscal year 19 to 21, when you compare it to fiscal year 16, 17, and 18, the numbers just can't even compete. So in conclusion, there has been an increase in expenses in more than one category within the building department. The building inspector's salary has increased steadily over the 6-year period. The zoning department has seen a sharp decrease in revenue. The past 3 fiscal years have resulted in less profit than the 3 fiscal years before that period. From fiscal year 17 to 18, there was a 62% decrease in gross profit, and from fiscal year 18 to 19, there was a 77.5% decrease in gross profit. It is important to note that the department recently eliminated 1 full-time benefit position, saving about $12,000 a year in benefits, but again, I don't think that's enough savings to warrant not increasing some of our permit fees. So my recommendations is that a raise in the permit fees that I've mentioned is justified because I believe Dudley provides above average services and our fees should reflect this. I don't recommend that the Board of Selectmen decides to increase permit fees to such high costs that would impose a financial burden on residents and commercial developers. Increasing some of the town of Dudley's permit fees would subsequently increase revenue to the building department, likely leading to an increase in gross profit. And if you're wondering what this increase in gross profit would be allocated towards, this additional revenue could be used to cover the increasing salaries of the building inspector and the zoning licensing inspector clerk. And the building department has also incurred a yearly fee to operate and maintain the online permit system known as OpenGov. The town of Dudley began using this online permit system in fiscal year 22, hence why it hasn't been included in my presentation until now because I focused on fiscal years 16 to 21. The yearly cost to operate OpenGov is approximately $26,000, so some of the increased revenues could be allocated towards the cost of the OpenGov system, which is going to be a yearly cost for the town. Any questions? Yes.
OpenGov, is it only cover building department permits, or does it do something else?
It's, the majority of it covers building department, but it also does highway permitting, fire permitting. We're trying to migrate licensing, the alcohol and tobacco licensing that we do here onto that platform. It's got some assessor capability built into it. So it's being built upon almost on a weekly basis. But for right now, the majority of it is building permitting.
So as a percentage of usage of the 26,000 is
80% probably at this point.
call it 20,000. Human calculator will figure that out.
No, I won't. What was it?
So let's call it 20. All right, so the decreased revenue, is that a result of decreased volume or increased costs?
Probably, that's a good question.
It looks,
I would say a bit of both. I would say decreased volume mainly recently because of the pandemic. I think people have been doing less building and projects and things like that.
That
Also,
explains the last 2 years for sure.
for sure, definitely.
Is there any special cause for that fiscal year 17, $140,000 worth of stuff in there? Revenue? No?
I'm sure there is, I don't.
It's an
have it in
outlier,
front
so
of me.
it's an outlier, so I
Excuse me.
don't, I tossed that and I see a nice level graph.
Yes, you do.
Mr. Chair,
Sullivan.
thank you. First off, excellent report. It's well put together, well formatted, easy to understand. I think your first question, my uninformed opinion would be, I get a feeling a lot of work was probably done that wasn't permitted or inspected. Because I think in the last 18 months, all you gotta, excuse me, all you gotta do is read any trade journal, anything, any financial out there, home improvement stores boomed. I mean, you couldn't get in some of these stores at the height of the pandemic between volume of crowd and restrictions. So I think a lot of work was probably done that wasn't permitted or reviewed, not to anybody's fault at the town hall. I'm sure people did work, just did it. I know, excuse me, one of my neighbors put siding on the house, and when Nelson came out to inspect, he turned around to leave, and somebody put a small addition on the back of their house without a permit, and the roof wasn't to the right pitch. So it was definitely done by the resident without a licensed contractor, they would have known. So I believe Nelson helped the person correct that deficiency. But my question on building department expenses skyrocketed between FY '20 and '21, so well above the 6-year look back. Was there a reason behind that? It went like, in '20, it was 282.78, and it went to 1,666.58, do we know?
Well,
General expenses?
There's been a significant increase in enforcement, without question.
So that'd be more him going out and doing
There's-
re-inspections and,
There's been purchases made to accommodate the new online platform as well.
okay,
So that could be a one-time
Excuse me.
for the expense increases.
okay. I just noticed that one being really, really eye-catching. But again, this is an excellent report. I mean, is this gonna be up on our website and anybody can look at it? I mean, this is really,
Depends on how the vote goes tonight, right?
assuming the vote goes well. So, Mr. Chair, is our intention to review each category of fees as presented? Or do we want to try to just make a blanket vote to,
What we've done through the chair is Olivia's prepared a sheet where we are below average in some categories, and I would recommend starting at that point.
well, it appears in, excuse me, in every category in Olivia's summary that we are either at the low or the lowest in virtually every single one.
There's a lot that she didn't summarize on there where we stack up to the average.
I guess I'm just looking for what's the, you asked earlier at the very beginning, what's the end result? We're looking at bringing everything up to the average, to,
No, I asked,
paraphrase, sorry if I misspoke.
no, I want to make sure that we're basing the fee structure based on the cost and the expected volume. That's why I'm not interested if we are keeping up with the Joneses. What I'm interested in is, are we doing what we're supposed to do to balance the budget, provide the appropriate services for the people in the town, and then not lose our shirt while doing it. So,
I'm holding my hand up, you keep going though.
to me, that's, if you compare us to a town, it's about volume at that point, and what's it cost to handle the volume. It's less about what's Shrewsbury doing with 10,000 permits a year for in comparison to things we're doing. So that's my concern.
Well, the good thing is we didn't use Shrewsbury as a benchmark. I think some of these towns have full-time inspectors and we don't. So,
Yeah, and when you look, costs aren't skyrocketing. It went from 600 to 1,600. So I think we need to be careful. If you look at your total costs, they're pretty steady. Some smaller items, the only big change is OpenGov, which is if you spread it to, it's 80% here, that's 20 grand that we didn't have in cost before. Everything else is, you see change in salary, but the increase and the decrease it's a wash.
I want to thank you for this. When I see mean, median, mode, good stuff, you basically gave us all the information we need to look at easily to make a decision, and it's broken down, but there's still enough detail there where we can do things. One thing I want to ask of the board here, I noticed gross profit, and when I think of gross profit, I think about a business earning money above and beyond what their expenses are, and I want to ask, what's our intention with these fees? Are we looking to charge fees that cover the cost of the permitting and the enforcement, and we kind of break even-ish? Or are we looking to these permit fees as a revenue source for the town? Because that's a fork in the road, and that will, I think we should start there before we start deciding if we're going to move them, and if so, how much. Do we want these permits to be a revenue stream, or do we just want to cover our expenses in providing, as Mr. Johnson said, the services to the residents?
So as we're thinking about that question, Mr. Chairman, I'll just remind the board that with the exception of the building inspector, the electrical inspector, the plumber inspector, they get 70% of the revenue they collect. The net profit is different than the gross profit. 30% goes to the town, 70% goes to the inspector, so they don't have a payroll per se, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So that number could be a little bit offset as well.
So then I'd ask on the electrical inspections and the gas inspections, are we losing money, or are we ahead of the game, are we even? Because if these numbers in here, and I'm going up to those sections, are gross, and and you said they keep 70% of the fee?
Correct.
So we need to times it by 0.3.
But that's not overhead. That's
There's no overhead.
strictly 70% of anything that comes in.
The only overhead that was created was the online permitting system, which they now use in the tablets that we provided, and the administrative services.
Right, so if permits dry up, you're not gonna run a loss.
Correct.
You get 1, you get 100, it's still 70% of the fee. Whereas this is, you've got salaries, you have built-in costs now with the $20,000 a year. It's just all,
I think too, Mr. Chair, when we went to that 70-30 split, it was presented at town meeting and was voted, it was an incentive to get those permits done, to incentivize the inspectors, not that they weren't doing their jobs, I'm not saying that at all, nor did we say it at the time. So I think those were slightly different in the big picture, but when we're talking about the other permits, and probably my earlier comment that was not to keep up with the Joneses per se, we want to be fair, we want to give the residents the service that they paid for, we want to give them what they deserve. But just as other departments come in with their fee schedules, we don't want to be the lowest, you don't want to be the highest, excuse me, but you want to be fair. And permitting, like any other license or any other penalty, if someone's caught without a permit and they pay a punitive, becomes a revenue source. And we've never gone to, they're not here, I'll pick on them, police or fire, and say, write tickets and write permits where you have to run the ambulance, cover your costs. And I don't think we're trying to do that here. But we're also not at a huge department. It's Nelson, and as we've all stated more than once, we know our inspector gives us above and beyond the 20 hours. And I'm not saying more permits, more salary. I think it's just obvious looking at the numbers Olivia provided. When you break it down by each category, we are obviously severely out of the norm when it comes to the surrounding towns.
And
That's what we compete with.
And through the chairman, this board has done the right thing in promoting efficiencies in that office by eliminating several part-time positions, 2 benefited positions, combining it into 3, going to the online permitting system that actually, it actually increases the productivity during the day of not just the building department and the licensing and code enforcement department, but all departments, because this is now an electronic paper chase as opposed to the walkthrough for every permit that's required to sign off. So the board has done a lot to increase the efficiency of that department. We just need to keep up with being able to keep the employees in that department, for one thing. That's where the salary comes in. And being on par with neighboring towns was a message that we sent with our salary survey. It should translate into our permitting fees, because our permitting fees are offsetting the cost of our salary to retain good employees and to attract new employees if necessary.
Okay.
I have a question about figure 19, gross profit, building and zoning departments. It goes from 53,000, 147, 56, 12, 17, and then to 2021, 48,000. This amount, this 48,000, is this how much the town took in permit fees above and beyond the salaries, the open gov expenses?
I believe the calculation is the revenue minus expenses.
Revenue minus expenses is
So
gross profit.
salaries and expenses, yes.
So this 48,000 is what we have collected above and beyond what we've paid to provide the service to the residents, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I scanned it, rough math. It was like 109,000 in, 60-something thousand out.
I just wanted to make sure
I'm not
that-
sure that had the open gov in it.
No, it
Just-
does not include OpenGov because OpenGov was in fiscal year '22.
Gotcha. It's now
20.
20, so if everything stayed the same, it would be 20,000 less this year.
And that's if these fees paid for the open gov, never mind everything else we
Yeah,
do.
if everything else stays the same, you take the 49-ish minus another 20. Okay.
So again, Mr. Chair, is the intent tonight to vote permits by each category? Is it try to come to a consensus on the overall permit
Give me
structure?
a hand up.
I do.
The agenda item says permitting fees study, request to adjust permitting fees. So I don't think it's the,
I do have a document of recommended fee adjustments that I can
that'd be great, thanks.
open up for
Is
you.
that in that packet?
It should be in the packet.
Like 4 files inside that folder. Recommended fee adjustments?
Yes.
I don't see that one. Go back to. Oh, this one here, okay. Yep, all right, thank you.
Do you want to present, or?
Can you click that again?
All right.
Okay, so I broke this down into category, much like my presentation: electrical, gas, plumbing, and building, listing out the fee type, what our current price is, what the average is, and then what my recommendation is. And my recommendation is in bold. Do you want me to go through every single one, or are you good just reading it?
The average is the average from the area,
From the 6-town average, the one that was, yep, mentioned in my presentation.
okay.
So it's all the amounts divided by how many towns there are.
Yep.
What would be the new calculated gross profit number if these went through today?
That I don't have because that's dependent on the number of permits applied for each of these categories. So that would have been difficult to calculate.
Excellent answer.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm gonna ask for an extrapolation of the data that's presented.
Yeah, was that right?
He's only one vote.
That's a third today.
I'll cancel him out. Kerry's gonna have to be the tiebreaker.
You know where I'm going with this.
Mr. Chair, if you're looking for a motion, I'm comfortable making a motion.
Let me just scan down.
What does Abby think? It's all good, right?
All right, the building one. Dudley's fee is $6 per thousand with a $5.25 minimum. A lot of variance in fee structure across, okay. So on a $100,000 project, it would go from 600 to 850.
Oh, 700. I'm sorry, 7. Building fee?
Average is 850, sorry, the average is 850.
Yeah, she's recommending 7 instead of 6.
It would roughly be, give or take a couple points, roughly a 20% increase, roughly. Depending on how many, if all of a sudden we get a lot of plumbing, a lot of electrical, a lot of pools, who knows, roughly 20% increase.
Anything more than a 20% swing in volume is, upsets the apple cart anyway. So that would be a plan B and C. That throws all this out the window.
So
For
100
staffing and all that stuff. So that's
I'm juggling walking on a log here, it's not exact. It's,
yeah, exactly.
So a $100,000 project right now would be 600. If we adopt the recommendation, it'd be 700. Simple math, right? And probably be passed on by the builder to the building anyway. The present price. Honestly, I don't see any fee change that could be considered burdensome, onerous. I mean, some of them,
Justified?
well, I think they're all well justified, but none of them
So there's been no change in 6 years.
said 2012 on the.
2012 was the last time it was changed. The last time it was looked at was 6 years ago, and no change was voted at that point.
So no change since 2012.
Correct.
And in fact, I only see 1 or 2 that exceeds the average. Again, it's not keeping up with the Joneses, it's just keeping up with the data presented.
What's that mean?
I don't have a problem with what's being proposed.
24.2.
Maybe like a 2.2% increase per year from 2012. That doesn't sound absorbent.
It doesn't, but I'll tell you the way I look at this. And if, Mr. Sullivan, if you make a motion, I'll second it for discussion. But we're not a business. We're not here to make money. We are here to provide services to the people in the town. We're here to collect enough to offset that. We're collecting more than enough to offset that. That's the number I'm looking at. Fine, we haven't raised it in 9 years. We're still collecting more than what it costs us to provide the services to the people, and I don't see the need to taxation without representation, whatever you want to call it, but I don't see the need to raise it.
Well, the representation is right.
I understand, but we're a town, we're not a business. We shouldn't be making a profit. We should be covering our expenses. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate this. This is an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. That's just where I'm at.
The presentation has the facts.
Yes, facts are
Thank you.
great. That's how we make
I
decisions.
don't think I've seen it collected in a common sense way. And there's very few of them, let's say that. So thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I agree with the concept of what Kerry said. I think we are a service-driven entity, but we have to have some sort of business principle, because also and I'm sure it's a small but minor, you know, in all this fees and permits, it doesn't just include the building inspector, there's a lot of other indirect costs associated with, the treasurer has to process payments. If there's other avenues, as Mr. Ruda said, now it's a lot of online permitting, but some projects require multiple levels of review. And I know, for example, the water department has their own fee structure when they're doing tie-ins or whatever the case may be. We are obviously a service-driven entity, but we have to have a business model to it. And these offices are affected just like everybody else. In the small picture, big picture, I'm not sure, abstract, fuel costs. When fuel goes up and people are in the office, heat's running, people here at night, I mean, we know we get more bang for our buck, we say it all the time. And again, I don't think any proposed fee is burdensome, and I don't think any of them are out of line. If my motion's gonna be specific, if you're willing to accept it, for example, to state, based on the fact we haven't raised our fees in a decade, in the face of rising costs and rising cost of doing business, I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the fee structure as proposed based on the presentation, and that is everything that is in bold print.
Is that a motion?
If the chair will accept it as such.
I'll accept the motion.
I'm going to second it for discussion. I agree what you're saying, Mr. Sullivan, and I disagree with you respectfully. I understand where you're coming from, but I just think, like I said, we're covering the expenses that it costs to provide the service to the people. And I think especially right now with everything going up in price, I know this isn't much, but still, personally, I'd like to hold off a year or two, but I respect both of your opinions, and I hope you'll respect mine.
All right, sorry.
So the motion, to repeat the beginning of the motion, to paraphrase it,
Based on the fact we haven't raised rates in 10 years, in the face of rising costs of doing business that we accept.
the data presented shows pretty flat cost.
Well, yes and no. I mean, salaries have gone up. I know we eliminated a full-time position over there, but salaries have gone up, benefits, I guarantee you benefits have gone up, and I know they're all built in there, and there's a small profit at the end of the year. Well, if that's the way the vote's gonna go, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna withdraw my motion, wait till we have at least 4 people here, and then, if Paul calls in, there'll be 5, but under the Robert's Rules of Order, the chairman can only vote to break a tie or to make a vote unanimous. I'd rather wait till Mr. Massey's here, so we can have his opinion too, then. If the second allows it to be withdrawn.
I'll allow whatever you'd like, Mr. Sullivan.
Maybe give a little more time, maybe we can individually speak to the building inspector and his clerk. Maybe get
It's fair to ask, to take the right amount of time to, instead of doing that,
Just for the board's reflection, Mr. Chairman, just remember that construction was shut down during COVID by the executive order. There were no fees being collected, there was no permitting being done. And,
definitely skewed numbers.
huh?
Definitely skewed numbers.
And we created a lot of efficiencies that we artificially kept the numbers low by eliminating several positions. So what I think I'm asking for, and I think why I was asking for an increase to the average, is that so next year we're not, every year we're trying to adjust the fee. I think for the average, we can ride it for a few years. I think we've been on target for the last decade or so. But the time, this is not going to impact economic development at all, because we're not charging any more than the average in the area. It's not going to have much of an impact on anything except our ability to not pass on costs to taxpayers who aren't using the service, as opposed to this fee-based increase that's actually on average and on par with the neighboring towns. So I don't think this is burdensome at all. And I hope that the board as a whole will consider that we're not about making a profit, but we need to keep up with our ability to retain employees, to pay employees, to keep up with increased costs, which we know are coming. The increased cost of the software, it's not always going to be $26,000 annually. It's going to increase, and we shouldn't have to react every single time that there's an increase in that department. We're about flatline. We're very close, but let's stay a little bit on top of it, as opposed to having to react every single year to adjust fees. You know, then the more you adjust fees, the more attention you bring onto yourself for doing it, and the more you have to justify it. I think we have a great presentation, a great justification for it here tonight.
Mr. Chair, probably a bad example, and I'm not going to make any friends. For years, we as a board, even previous to all members, heck, for example, we kept the permit fee as low as possible at the transfer station. All of a sudden, the last 2 years, we got hit with, I don't know, Jeff, how long since you've been here, a tenfold increase in recyclables. Everything went up, and all of a sudden, we had to raise fees, reduce service. So I think, to just echo kind of what Mr. Ruda just said, if the board chooses to accept the adjusted fees, it keeps us a little bit ahead of the curve, as opposed to maybe a year or two from now, like Kerry said, we come back, we say, you know, holy cow, we really got to raise the fees. And as Mr. Ruda said, it brings a little more attention to you, and then you're really going to upset people. I think a smaller increase now would prevent a larger increase down the road, and prevent us from running into, like I said, at the transfer station, all of a sudden cost well out of our control. I mean, well documented. I mean, we couldn't talk enough about it. Some people understood and some people didn't. They just looked at, gee, I used to pay this much, now I'm paying that much, and I'm getting a reduced service. So I think, if I'm paraphrasing, I apologize, Mr. Ruda, but your analogy is correct. We're flatline or a little bit ahead. We should always be a little bit ahead. We should never be reacting to a negative. We should try to be proactive.
I hear what you're saying, and I know the transfer station was, before it wasn't, it was, I know it'll start another hour-long conversation, but it was at least breaking even, if not making money, and there's different visions on that. But as I'm looking at, I'm gonna reference figure 19, gross profit again. From fiscal year 16 to 21, that's 6 years. All of those years was about $300,000 in profit, so we're averaging 60 grand a year, roughly, in over collecting fees as opposed to what we've charged. So in my mind, we've got a little bit of a buffer there to take us to next year, maybe the year after, before we change them. But no, this is good dialogue. This is how government's supposed to work. This is good. I like this.
You know, I would submit.
And I agree with Mr. Siganovich, and I'm not going to get into a big debate because he's generally on the same page that I am. However, things like the cost of, for example, over the course of the last year, the legal fees associated with the building department, and not to get into that comparison. You know, there are a lot of things that we don't consider or may not be considered at the point of break even that are actual costs incurred that, you know, we need to be able to respond to and not shift that off to the taxpayer. We shift it onto people actually pulling the permits and the people who are inspecting it to stay within a market range for the area.
You know, Mr. Chair, and again, I don't want to be here all night. It's getting close to 8 o'clock. I'm sure some of these numbers are skewed. I'm sure if we went back to fiscal 217, it's a big number. I guarantee you there was some large-scale commercial projects which drove that number. I mean, that is not a representative number for Dudley. I guarantee you're not going to find that number virtually anywhere. So, again, if we can wait and have a closer to a full board, maybe do a little more outreach.
And Olivia can give her presentation again to the board. How's that sound?
Well,
Extra credit.
within the next 9 days, I'm pretty sure she's not going to hang around for it.
So if we're gonna look at it again, a couple things I'd ask for. I'd like to see, percentage in dollars profit graph. Cause right now it's, you see dollars, right? And then apparently all the costs aren't in this model, you just said that, Mr. Town Administrator. So I'd want all the costs associated and a projection out with the cost. It's like budgeting, right? This is just one chunk of the town budget. So what are the real
So
projections?
you want indirect costs as well, figured into that.
I want all the costs, because it doesn't sound like all the costs are in here for building, and then project them. All right, so the motion was pulled
Retirement
back. Would you
Withdrawn.
agree?
Yeah. He agreed.
You agreed?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so no motion presented?
Bring it up next meeting,
All right.
with closer to a full board.
Good job.
All right,
That
cool.
was a great presentation, though.
Thank
That was
you.
really
It
good.
truly was.
Thank you.
Hope you're getting a letter of recommendation out of this or something.
Hope so.
We'll see how next
I'll
meeting
gladly
goes.
sign that. That was good stuff. Thank you.
Believe me, it's not you, it's me. I know.
It's always you.
Student rep.
Oh. Let's do the student rep first, since I'm jumbling everything together.
Shepherd Hill Show Choir has their annual Christmas show this weekend on Friday, December 10th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then Saturday, December 11th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
All right.
How was the craft fair, Abby?
It was fun.
Yeah. A lot of
it
good
was really
pictures in the
good.
paper.
It was nice.
Excellent.
And Powder Puff went well too.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Could I ask a question of you? Would you mind, since we're talking about data and numbers, sports team scores, maybe not even the scores, just letting us know how they're doing, if someone's in the playoffs, if, I know we don't play Bartlett anymore, but 20 years ago, it would have been nice to know if we beat Bartlett or something, but
Well, I know they lost to Tantasco, we know that.
Yeah.
never lost any year I went.
Thank God the fire chief isn't here.
Oh, this would have been all over 45 minutes ago.
Can say that again.
All right, thank you, Abby. Departmental communication.
Jeff,
George.
George.
Go from the back to the front.
shaking it up this week. George going first.
Go for the treasurer collector.
Treasurer collector is not attending.
It's a quick one tonight, only two of them.
Just to keep you guys updated, the latest blending is in for this month, and it's very good. It keeps right where we always are, so we're staying right where we should be. The alert you got was because of the temporary treatment vessel that came in, the GAC vessel. If you go down Schofield Ave, even tonight, or you can see it probably in Bernie's parking lot there, ready to go. It's about 24 feet high and 12 foot around. And we're gonna make an attempt to put that in place with a crane tomorrow on its little cement pad. So once that's in place there, then go from there and start piping and permitting and everything else. So like I said, we're expecting it maybe to come into place sometime in the late January, February timeframe, but subject to weather, subject to a bunch of things. So we at least got through the summer and got to where we are, and that's gonna get us a get out of jail free card now. Once that gets into effect, that's gonna bring our PFAS way down to nothing. So, one step at a time.
Thanks, George.
George, does that filter out anything but PFAS?
No, it does more than that too. It does more than just PFAS. There's a whole bunch that it does do, and it can be expanded to more. And as you see next door, they're just starting their dilemma. Those vessels are probably a good year away if you had to order one now, because of the demand. That's why we started early and got this going. So now we're in the good. And DEP is relentless. They're going to be adding more substances out of the 8 and add more because they want to maintain a stability of a degree of taking care of what's in there. They're all getting hyped up on this now, so it's going to get worse before it gets any better. So we're prepared with the new treatment plan and with that temporary.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, George.
Highway.
Jeff. Oh, you said highway. I thought you said coyote.
Okay.
Coyote.
Might need hearing aids.
So we've wrapped up the paving and construction season. We had a little taste of winter weather after the holiday, and had the crews out spreading some salt for that. We're still preparing the equipment and getting ready for the winter season with for snow and ice control. And just to expand a little on some information that the town administrator gave you on the card system and the fuel island at the highway department. We originally had information that we were going to have to do an update to some of the equipment there at the highway department for the venting of the gas tanks there. That's been held off for another year by the DEP. So we an update that we may likely have had to have made just for compliance. We now won't have to make, and I'm currently putting together budget pricing for the decommissioning of the tanks there and the system on site at the highway garage.
Jeff, so oversight of the costs involved with the cards, is that going to be tracked in some way, or what's the oversight look like?
So basically, the WEX system is they manage the entire system on a monthly basis. By department, we'll get statements and invoicing that'll go to. It'll be managed through the clerk that's shared between the highway, conservation and planning currently, and the invoicing will be paid directly by the treasurer's office, and then the costs associated with each, the fuel used for each department will be billed to each individual department, the police, fire, highway, water, and sewer. And each of the department heads will be able to go into the system and have a view license to look at those costs, so they'll know if there's anything skewed with their costs. So it seems to be a pretty good system. It's used by maybe a couple hundred municipal and state agencies just in Massachusetts. So should work out very well. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, Mr. Town Administrator, just like the great example of the transfer station, we now know we're in the black. It'd be interesting to see how this changes or doesn't change over time.
The fuel system?
Yeah.
I think that we've already, just by making the change, we've realized some short-term benefit, because we're not gonna have to replace that tank, which is $500,000 to $700,000 right off the rip. And to come up to the equipment replacement that Jeff was speaking about, $15,000 annual inspection fees. I think it will more than cover the cost, and in doing so, and kind of eliminate any sort of environmental liability that we might have down there at the highway.
Just like we said at a previous meeting, though, we have to be able to prove it. Because if in the long, it's $300,000 more a year, just insane number. In 3 years, you'll be talking about, why didn't we just replace the tank? So we just wanted.
Yeah, I think it's easy to show by virtue of the fact of what we were paying for fuel. We're within what Jeff, less than a.
I think currently we're actually paying a premium for the fuel, just for the convenience of having it on site. So it's actually because of the compliance issues with having underground storage tanks, and the fact that there's other things associated with environmental insurance. There's a requirement to have an AB operator, which we don't employ, and we've found that there's it's a pretty lengthy process to get the certification for that. So we're actually outsourcing that now at a cost of like John said, be $15,000 a year. So if we're able to eliminate that and all of the other issues, as well as the fact that the tanks will be 35 years old. So there's two 4,001 diesel, one 4,000 gallon gasoline. So it's a wise thing to get them out of the ground. There's annual testing requirements. There's more stringent regulations that come across. Like I said, there's a vapor recovery system that would need to be updated by January this year. They've staved that off to January next year. So it's just by chance that, and I just realized, I just found out about that last week from the individual that we're using to outsource the inspections. So I think it's going to be a wise move. And like I said, if you break everything down and all the costs associated, it may look like on its face, just from looking at an invoice, that we're buying fuel at a relatively cheap price. It's with everything included, we're actually paying a premium. So
Gotcha,
thanks.
So it appears we're paying a fair price to provide a service, but there's actually built-in cost and expenses that we don't know about, similar to a permit.
Yeah, but residents don't have to pay to get their road
They do, they have to
plowed.
pay their tax to get their road plowed, their streets taken care of course they do.
I can't wait for the next meeting to be.
And we
I'm
don't-
gonna- This is gonna be the only agenda item, Mr. Chairman.
And we don't charge them an extra 60 grand a year for it either.
Nope, but when you run out of money,
Alright.
you run out of money.
Anyone covering for fire or police? No.
Yeah, no kidding. Get there about halftime.
You ready for the number 11? You ready for me to read that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we convene into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, subsection 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiation with non-union personnel, and not to reconvene in public session.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Carrie Siganovich, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Not to, yeah, he said that, all right.
Thanks, everybody.